Hejsan allihop! Hej allesammans! Jag har hört att den här sändningen kommer att skickas både i Sverige och i Danmark för gucker. Så att då blir det ju lite svårt med språk kanske. För jag kan tänka mig inte alla är med när det gäller svenska. Eller måske det danske. Så jag tror vi håller den här föreläsning på engelsk. Så att jag tror vi håller den på engelska. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Tom Svensson, and I'm a member of the Canon Nordic photographers program. I'm very proud of it. And I'm going to tell you how I use the Canon gear in different ways. Most of the time when I'm out taking photos, I work with conservation, and I use the camera as a tool. Most of my time I actually don't take photos, but I work with conservation hands-on. But the camera is such a fantastic and strong tool that it influences people very, very much. So that's why I'm very happy to use it. And this is just some of the stuff I've been doing and are doing. I mean, it's anti-poaching. I've worked a lot against the illegal trade. The anti-poaching is very much in different parts of the world. Done a lot of work down in South Africa with the rhino poaching. Working against habitat destruction. Trophy hunt is a problem. I've just got involved in a very, very interesting project. But I'll tell you later when it's taking off and this time of Corona is over and I can start travel again. Animal selfies is a big problem. I worked against palm oil, the suffering of Borneo. Elephant riding has been a big problem. That is looking better. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. And I also, many years ago, started working against shark fin soup. And I got a lot of restaurants in Sweden to stop serving it. And this is out with Flying for Rhinos, an anti-poaching team. You see, a bad hair day, extremely bad. And we fly in these small aircrafts, ultra-light ones, to check out if there's any poachers. And this is a poached rhino. And you see they take the horns off, because that's the only valuable thing on the rhino, it's the horns. It's actually the most expensive material on earth today, so it's horrible. Thank God it's going down slightly. Now at the moment, because of Corona, we see an increase in bushmeat instead. This is in a safe house in Asia, when I work with the illegal trade, against the illegal trade. And this is just ivory, and this is just a small part of the ivory they've been taking. So it's been an enormous problem. Again, luckily we see a decrease in the poaching of elephants, and we need to decrease it, and we need to decrease it a lot more, because otherwise they'll all get extinct. And these iconic, magical animals, we need to save them. This is from Burma. Burma, as you probably know, is not one country, it's different states. And this is from the strongest states. It's called Special Region 4, or Mongla, where I managed to get in and get a lot of undercover photos of what's going on there. I also got photos of when people was buying and selling rhino horns. Again, from markets, different markets around the world. This is markets with turtles. Sorry to say that this is again selling and buying, and in this case this lorry was to be eaten in a restaurant, where I managed to get on the inside and in a closed room where these animals were sitting waiting to get eaten. I also been very lucky to be working with African Apes, an amazing organization with a friend of mine, Anne Oliver, and we worked in South Sudan, where South Sudan does a fantastic work trying to stop the illegal trade of wildlife. And in this case it's chimpanzees. Chimpanzees are brought from DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and through South Sudan up and out of Africa. And these are small, very young babies. And the government of South Sudan, especially the wildlife department of South Sudan, is doing an amazing job trying to stop this, and we are trying to help them to, when they confiscated these chimps, to bring them to safe areas and where they can be brought up and live a more natural life than in these horrible places they will end up in otherwise. Shows, animal shows, whatever you do, don't go to them. This is in Asia, where we've got tiger shows, horrible things to see. Animal selfies is absolutely devastating, and I get so upset when I see it. This was in Indonesia, where they holding these fruit bats, and time after time after time they're bringing out these bats. The wings are pulled out, and these tourists are standing there smiling, having a photo taken, and these are nocturnal animals. But this is happening during day, so they don't get any sleep, which means they will be stressed to death. And all this so we can get a photo. For me, this is unbelievable. So that's one of the things that also has to stop. So why should we have a photo of an animal and just for fun when it's getting killed by it? It's ridiculous. More of these horrible animal selfies. In Thailand, this was an American lady. I had a long talk to her afterwards, and she didn't know what was behind all this stuff, so she was horrified, and she would never ever have an animal selfie again. These poor tigers are brought up, they're drugged, they're beaten, and they're all there just so someone can sit and have a photo next to it. It's just sick. When it comes to palm oil, I managed to be the first one to get a big shop in Sweden, to mark the products that doesn't have palm oil in it. So I don't want to point fingers, but I want the consumer to have a chance to make their own decisions. So we made this marking on all the products, and it was fantastic to see. There was such a nice feedback from his customers, and they were so happy that now they easily could have the choice made, because it's so hard to know if there's palm oil in a product or not. But thanks to Stefan and the shop, it was a good start. And elephant riding. Please never ever do elephant riding. Managed to get all the photo travel agents in Scandinavia to stop selling elephant riding for photographers. We should not sit on these poor animals. They are not toys, they're not there for amusement. We should take photos of them in the wild. That's where we should do all the work. And I've been lucky to that media is letting me getting my voice heard. So I'm lucky to have in morning shows frequent guests, and I'm very happy and proud of that, because that way we get the information out and people might stop. And I'm a proud ambassador of World Animal Protection that does an amazing work. But now back to what I do for Canon and how I'm out and what I do with my gear. And first, of course, my most important tool is my 1DX. it's without any doubt the best camera in my point of view out there today, and it's reliable, it works, and never ever had problems through all the years I've been having one of the 1DX or any of the other 1Ds. They always work. It is a workhorse, and it's amazing, and it makes me relax because I know the tool will not fail me. And my preferred lens is the 2400. The 2400, when that came, it made such a big difference for me, because suddenly I could take the shots and do them ready when taking it. And for me, that is such a big thing, because I want to complete the photo when I take it, not afterwards, but at that second when I see it. I want to compose it, I want to make it ready, and that makes it so much easier with the 2400. So that's always, I would say, 95% of the time my choice of lens when out on safaris or different places in the world. And see, I carry it around with me always. It makes a difference. That is an amazing lens. Of course, I've got other stuff in my bag. I carry the 70-200. I'm starting to use the wide angles a lot more, and I will show you how I use them. And so this is what I carry always. The Pixie from Manfrotto is very, very important. I'll show you why I think it's so important. But the main tool is always the 2400. I mean, it's actually not a 2400 with a converter. It's a 200 to 560 millimeters, which means I can get a really close up, and I can even go out when it's a bit distance to have a wide angle almost, like the polar bear in Svalbard on 200 millimeters, which makes a big difference. And that's what I love about this lens. When I'm there, when I'm close and I want the close-ups, I can do the close-ups, but I can very, very rapidly change, and I zoom out, and I can get more of the habitat around it. It looks better. And so when I sit there and do these photos, you can zoom out, you can have the habitat and beautiful, but as quickly you can zoom in and make another feeling in the photos. So that's my choice of lens, I would say most of the time. But this time I'm going to show you that I told you that I'm using wide angle more. And I'm starting to use it because you get a different atmosphere when also having a wide angle close-up, and it's easy on animals that are more or less habitated like these marmots up in the Austrian mountains, and it's easy to get close and get nice shots of them. They don't care as long as you're calm, relax, you go slowly towards them. They don't care. In this case, wombats, same there. Close-ups, no problem. They more literally, in this case, he actually hit the lens because I was laying down waiting for him to walk past me. Instead, he walked into me. So that's another thing. And I find the variation of photos between the very close-ups and these wide-angle shots so nice to have when talking about different situations and species around the world. Wide angle close when they're drinking, elephants. But again, when you're getting to some of these animals, this is under a log, and this is a baby elephant. It's a very, very small young elephant baby. So this is under the log, and I had my Canon R under the log and just took it. And of course, since I had quiet shutter, it didn't react. It saw just a reflection. That's why it's looking at me, and I could take some photos, and then he just walked away. But I was safe behind the log because, of course, the problem was not the baby. it's the heavy one, it's the mummy that's there. So what do you do when we take photos of more dangerous animals, or animals we should not try to get close to, but we still want to have photos of? So I've been trying to look at that, and I'm trying out different types of photos for that. And I'll show you one of these examples, and one of them is in Kenya. Kenya is an amazing place, and there's one paradise place for me in Kenya where there's a lot of rhinos, and I wanted to have a close-up of a rhino with a wide angle. And of course you don't walk up to a rhino, that will be devastating, especially if it's a black rhino. It will definitely kill you, and with all right, we have nothing to do in their way and in their habitat, so leave them alone. But I was thinking about taking photos close to them. So I brought this homemade camera car. It's a 6-wheeler. It's a good friend of mine who rebuilt an ordinary remote car. 6-wheeler, works perfectly. And when it comes to rhinos, they're very, very curious. So I started up with this setup, and it's a 5D, and it's a 17 to 40 on it, and on top of it, you see on the top of the camera is the receiver, and it's actually in that receiver it's a small camera. So I have that's a transmitter, sorry, that's a transmitter, and I've got a receiver, and the receiver looks like an iPhone, so I can see what the transmitter sends, which means I can also see approximately what the camera sees, and it makes it so much easier to take the shot. And I found very, very quickly out that the best way to take photos of rhinos is to be in their way. So this is the 5D I used, and I brought the R along, and that turned out to be very, very good move to do. And the 70-40, it's, for me, it's a really, really good lens, and it's worth every penny of it. And I also used 11 to 24, but in this case it was mainly the 70 to 40 millimeters. So what I did is I could see where the rhinos was walking, so I drove the car up to where approximately I thought the rhinos would come. And of course it wasn't always that easy, because I couldn't see the grass, because if you look, the sender, the transmitter, is slightly higher than the lens, so sometimes I thought the grass was not covering the lens, and you got this. But that turned out very quickly, and that I found out a way to deal with that and learned. But as you see, you get a lot of photos that is not that good. And it was interesting because when you drive it forward and they hear the sound of the car, they stop. And what I did was to make sure I drove the car approximately in that direction they were walking, and very, very long before they came to that place. So I let the car stand still, and they are so curious, so they kind of walk closer to see what the sound is, what is going on. And they then see this thing. The eyesight is not the best, so they rely a lot of the smell, but they are curious, so they're getting closer. And that is the time when you find that grass is not too high, and you placed your car in the perfect spot. The rhinos is getting closer, and because they're so curious, they want to see what it is. The thing was with the 5D is that as soon as I got a shot, they heard the shutter. and they got scared. Then they ran away, or I wouldn't say run away, they walked away. So I changed the camera from the 5D to the R. That's where this fantastic new camera comes in, because it's a silent shutter. So that way I could send to the camera, it could take the shots without any sounds, and that meant that the rhinos came closer and closer and closer without getting spooked. In fact, they got so close I had to drive the camera and the car backwards, because otherwise they would probably have killed my camera completely, and I didn't want that, of course. So that was a bit what I did, and I can recommend the R very much for that project. That type of photos, when you have a camera trap and you put it out, use a silent camera, and it works so much better. And in this case, it solved my problems, and that's why I got the shots as I did. So this was an example on how it looks on rhinos, but I had another plan, and I wanted to have night shots of cats or night living animals. And I've got a friend who lives in Botswana, and he said, come to where I live. We got an amazing national park, and it's a beautiful area, and there's a lot of night activity going on. So me and my friend Anders Anula went down to Botswana to take photos. And again, the setup was remote, and in this case we actually had a remote setting that triggered itself, and we used at this time laser, and it was the 1DX, of course, and I had the 5D with me. At that time the R wasn't out on the market, so that was a problem. I used the 7040, of course, and the 1124. That is an amazing lens. I mean, it's so fantastic, and it's still sharp all the way, and you don't get a lot of distortions, and it's just amazing. This is a tool I always carry with me, the Pixie from Manfrotto. It's a small tripod. I always carry at least 4 or 5 of them with me, together with the Gorilla Pod, the Joby Pod. And that's another tool that is so important to bring along, especially on these projects when you want to have photos of that. So the setup we had was laser. So this is the laser sending, and we noticed when we started this project that we need to cover the laser where the laser shoots out, because in pitch black animals see the red light coming out, and that disturbs them. At night they are very sensitive to light, so we covered it in this, and as soon as you just let the light come out 10 centimeters or something, they can't see it. So that was one. So this is the sender, so this is the laser, and this is the receiver. So this is going in, and inside is a receiver, and that is then sending the signals to the camera to take the shot, and the camera is then sending a signal to the flash to flash at the same time as the camera goes off. And of course this is a multiple thing that has to be working 100% every time, and it turned out to be a little bit complex, so it wasn't that easy to start with. You see here the setup, and this is the 1124 and the Joby Gorilla Pod. And it's important to cover it up, so because you don't want the animals to see it immediately. And in Botswana it's dry, and of course very dusty, and it turned out to be a problem with the dust. And not with the lens, of course, but with the laser. So this is the setup. So you see the laser shooter on the right, and then the left hand side downwards from the camera is the receiver, and that is then sending the signal to the camera. And this was a different animal we were looking for. The thing was, this was in a low area, and we very rapidly got information that it had been raining up streams, and the water was coming so fast we had to hurry out in the middle of the night to find the gear, take it, bring it back, because within hours all this area was underwater. So luckily we actually saved all the equipment at that time, but also that meant we didn't get the shot I was hoping for on this fantastic species. But maybe next time. But I used a water hole to bring these nocturnal animals, and I put the camera on one side of the pond and on the other side, and then I covered around with thorny bush so they wouldn't steal the camera, especially lions. I've done that before. The lion steals the camera and runs off with it and find it to be a toy to play with. And I promise you there's not much left of a camera when they have been chewing on it or using it as a small toy. So I didn't want that to happen. I mean, they are tough, the Canon gear, but not that tough so a lion can chew on it. But so I just put thorny bush around it, and this is before I put thorn bush in front of it as well. So you kind of cover it all in the bushes, so just the lens is sticking out. So this is the setup at the small pond. And on the right hand side you see the laser, and the left hand side you see the receiver, and then the camera in the middle. So the thought is the animal should come here from in front, walk and drink, cut the laser beam, and the camera takes the shot. And of course all the sand was made sure it was all flat, so I could see when we got closer, because we had to go out once a night to change the batteries on the camera and on the flash. And nowadays I found a completely different system, so I don't need to change the batteries anymore. But at that time I had to do it. So if we had the sand all flat, as soon as we got close I could see if there was any tracks in the sand. But this problem was also the dust, because it's so dry in Botswana that the dust stirs up, and when the dust stirs up the laser gets visible for seconds, and that turned out to be another problem. During day I was trying again, and this is taken on a remote. I'm staying about 50-100 meters away, hiding, and with a remote control, not laser. I waited for the animals to come and drink in the water hole, and they wasn't disturbed at all by this. But it was really interesting to sit there alone in the middle of nowhere, see all these animals come up to the water hole, drink, and getting these nice shots. It was a great feeling. But I wasn't there to get the day shots. I was there to get the night shots. So what I did was to start setting up at different places, different locations, because I knew there were different animals and different places. So this is at a different location, and I have a plastic thing covering the camera, because in this area I knew there was a lot of hyenas, and then I really want the camera to be covered. So I covered it with a plastic and big stone on top, camouflage netting, a lot of thorny bush around, because they don't like the thorn bush. Of course they are hard to get, and here you see before I start to put more of the thorny bush around the camera, and this is again the 70 to 40 millimeters. And then one night we got the first shot. Anders came back in the morning because I was in a different location, and it took us about 8 or 9 days to get the first perfect night shot. Anders came back, I was doing at a different location, and every day when we met up, we looked at each other and it was nothing. There was shots, but they were nothing good. And then he came and I asked him, "What, Anders, have you got anything?" And he said, "Well, have a look." And the first shot I took up was this. And I went, yes, because we wanted the stars above it. So it's not just night shots. We wanted the animal in front and all the stars behind, and all in one shot. Not double exposure, one shot. And that is the big problem, to get that. So I took this up and realized that is a nice shot. I was so happy. At least we knew it worked. So I was saying to Anders, yes, that was such a relief. And he said, "Well, yeah, have a look on the next shot." On the next shot, I said, "Did we get another bird?" Well, he said, "Have a look." So I flipped on the camera, and this was it. We got a hyena. And this was one of the shots I really would like to have. That and a leopard. So I was so over the moon. I was screaming and yelling, running around. And it was an amazing shot. And we were so lucky because it was late at night. And just before the moon comes up, the stars are very intense. And in exactly that time, we got that shot. So I must admit, a lot of feelings came to mind when I saw this, and I knew we were there. We were nearly there. But the big thing, imagine getting a leopard. So we kept on working hard. Out at night, the biggest problem was actually to put the focus. And I need to put the focus when the camera is down. So you need to put your head all the way down to the viewfinder and look through it and put everything manually. And that was the biggest and hardest problem all the time. And especially in these circumstances. And this is one night we got it. The leopard came, and it was an absolutely black night. The stars were absolutely amazing. The bright one you see is Mars. And there was a little bit red mark, and that's the problem with the laser. It had a small marking on its face, on its nose. And Anders took it away. He cloned it away, so we could use that photo. That's why I don't use laser anymore, because if you're unlucky, you get a small red dot, and since I don't take anything away in my photos or alter them, I can't use it. So nowadays I use sensor, movement sensor instead, and that works actually even better than the laser. But this was the first step, and I must admit I was over the moon of joy when I saw this shot, because the leopard was there, and this was one of the last days we were in Botswana, and we got it. We got this amazing shot. So the setup is slightly different today than I used then, but also this works perfectly. Before I stop and take too much time off you, I would like to give you a small tip about how to edit. Because very often when I'm out, you see a sky and it's just amazing. The sky looks so good, and you see it and you go, yes, that is a nice sky. And you take the shot and the sky doesn't look as good on the photo because of course it's raw, and you have to really do a lot to it to get it back. But I found a way to do very little, and I'm gonna stop this lecture by showing you this tip. I don't edit my photos very much, but sometimes you need to do it. And in this case, when I took these shots, the sky looked tremendous. Clouds standing out, and I thought this will be a nice one. And afterwards, seeing the shots, I was very, very disappointed. So, but I found a way to do it slightly better without doing too much to it. And I'm going to show you this now. So, I just start as normal, as you always do. You change a little bit with the stuff, pull up the shadows a bit, put some more texture on it, a little bit clarity, and now we go down to dehaze. Look what happens when we start pulling dehaze on this shot. Look how these clouds suddenly becomes what I saw them when I took the shot. Still a bit dark, but it's changed the photo completely. Then I pull up the light here so we get it brighter. I actually won't go up to vibrance because I think it's going to be too blue and look unnatural. Maybe pull up the shadow so we see the giraffe a little bit more, and then back to dehaze. And as you see, you can pull it, but then it tends to get too much. So let's go back a little bit. And you can see by just doing this how you change the photo completely. So let's see it from the beginning. You see that the left one before is really dull and it's really useless. And after just pulling a bit of dehaze, it's changed and you can actually use it. So my friends, this is my tip for this week. And have a great week and take care of you. So now you can see this is the raw shot, and you see it's very plain, and this is the edit one. So that's a nice tip to have. And with that, my friends, I say thank you very much for your time. Tusen tack för er tid. Tusen tack för er tid. Och ha en fantastisk god dag. Ha en riktigt bra dag allihop. Och sköt om er i dessa tuffa tider. Take care in these tough times. Pass godt på jer selv.